Over the last 2 decades, India has seen rapid urbanization resulting in social, cultural, economic, and ecological dilemmas for today's young Indians. One seems to be getting lost in the din of everyday life where emotional safety of a joint family is giving way to a nuclear family and its nuances. Fond memories of summer vacations with a gang of cousins at grandma's home seems to be a dream from distant past. How do I pass on to my kids the culture that I have grown up with? In providing for others, how do I find space to provide for myself? Given my limited financial literacy, how do I invest wisely to meet the rapidly increasing cost of living? How do I play my role in conserving the ecology in context of climate change? What's my legacy that I want to leave behind? To explore these questions and more, here is a conversation with Sridevi Damodar, a corporate counsel presently managing the corporate legal portfolio at one of India's largest private sector insurance companies. With roots in Kerala, she started her career as a lawyer assisting in legal cases at the Districts and Sessions Court Mangalore, with brief stints at the High Court of Karnataka, Delhi High Court, and the Supreme Court before settling down with the corporate world in Mumbai, where she is currently based. Welcome, Sridevi, to Wings Podcast.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you for this opportunity. It's great to be here. It's a unique experience for me, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise, though, on the Wings Podcast, over the first 3 seasons, we have had 75 guests, as you know. But each podcast conversation for me is a different experience. It's very unique. So, I do share the anxiety and nervousness with you as much as you carry. But let's have some fun here. So, Sridevi, we live in a world of reels, a world where there is premium for attention. And whatever you wish to say, if you can say it in 2 minutes, verbally or visually, that's how you probably get your message across. I'm sure you are experiencing this day in and day out.
Very much.
Let's try and do a 2-minute reel here in trying to capture Sridevi's story through, let's say, 4 distinct memories of her. One, let's say, if you can pick one from your early childhood, one in your teenage years, one from your 20s, and now. Let's pick 4 memories of yours and try and patch them together to see if we can have a reel on Sridevi.
The 4 distinct memories. I need some time to think this through, though. The childhood one is the tougher one for me. I think the later years I can still come up with a few instances. Early childhood. Okay, got one. So one thing that, I'm just going with the flow. So whatever memory pops into my mind, that's what I'm going to go with. So summer vacations, were the time that I used to look forward to the most. There was school routine. I was brought up in Mangalore, in Karnataka, but my hometown was in Kerala. And every summer vacations, we used to, visit my granny's place. And I used to wait because my school would shut down a little earlier. And I would head over to my grandmother's place, and then I had to wait for my cousins to come over from different states. I used to look forward to it quite a bit. So that ranged about 2 weeks. But once they were in, the noise level at the house was such, and the memories that we created, that huge old house that we used to run around, and play games, noisy games at. That is one memory. And among the grandchildren, I was the only female at that point in time. The rest were either too grown up or and I was the youngest. So among all of them, I was the only female grandchild. So I grew up in a quite a boisterous environment with four brothers or cousins who used to enjoy troubling me, but I used to never back down. I'm like, you think you're better than me, think twice. I used to give as good as I got, and if that didn't work out, I would be bawling the place down. So I remember at that point, it's like I would be the only female. The minute I start bawling, everybody would come like, "What did you guys do?" And then they sort of toned down. So I remember that, and it's like not one-off instance. Every summer this has to happen.
Wonderful.
So if they are jumping off compound walls, even I have to jump down. Doesn't matter if I'm scared of the height, nothing. They've climbed trees and they're jumping down from there. Even I have to do it. So these are memories that stand out for me as a kid. And my parents never really told, oh, you can't do this, you're a female, behave better. No, they just let me be. The only concern they had was safety, but otherwise they never held me back from doing anything that any of my brothers were doing. At that point I didn't realize it, but as I age, right, in my teens, in my college days, even today, I believe that has had a huge impact on me. For me, it never mattered saying ki male, female. Later, you get the nuances and you understand, yes. But at home, it was never there. That distinction saying ki females are supposed to behave like this, boys only like this. So that it didn't matter. And I believe that was a good thing for me. Uh, Coming to, I think, teenage years, I think in my 11th, 12th, I was somebody who till my 10th was in a all girls convent school. I came to 11th, 12th, it was a co-ed. And I remember uh, I was usually, what do you say, not the uh, topper in the class or anything. I was an average student. And when I came to 11th, it was a co-ed. And I remember the first few interactions that we had, I volunteered to, be class rep or any particular position which needed some lead, what do you say, taking charge sort of a requirement. I never realized I had it in me. And at that point, I never thought about it either. But those interactions, those first couple of, those initial forays into those experiences sort of helped mold me. And I had my set of experiences there as well, because it was the first time where I was used to ordering my brothers around, but to be among a huge batch of around 90 or 100 odd students and go about telling I was a science student in my 11th, 12th, so there were like 11 of us females and the rest were all boys. So in that crowd, I remember one of my close friends came up to me in between the, in between, and told me saying, Shri, you need to tone down a bit. I'm like, what did I do? He was like, no, the guys are a bit scared of you. So I'm like, and I'm like, who and what? So then he was like, you remember this guy? He's like, he was a bit, he felt, he felt scared when you came and spoke about, giving the contribution. There was some event, and I had gone and told him, saying, you didn't give the contribution. You need to give it by this time. For me, it was a normal conversation. But then he came and said, and I was like, who, that guy, 6'3" and he's scared of me. And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. I was like, just normally I asked him saying he needs due and he needs to, or if he has any difficulty, tell me when he'll be able to give. I didn't say anything to him. He was like,
Yeah,
"No, you need to understand there is what do you say, the way in which you speak." Or I'm like, I have never felt that way.
yeah, yeah,
So that was, for me, it was new, because I always thought that I was the mild one, or, people were sort of used to me and I am not the dominating kinds. I still believe I'm not the dominating kind, and I don't think so. But at that point, that was the feedback. And I was totally surprised because, like I said, 11 girls and the rest 90, 80 people were boys. Among them, someone walks up to me and says, they're scared of you. And these are all 6 feet. You know, they can look scary. I'm like, I'm the small 5'4" female. How, in what sense am I scary? That was one experience that I'll never forget. I'll remember that always. And coming to my 20s, there was this, again, in my final year of law, uh, we, it's generally the thing saying ki over time, and especially in the final year, your bond sort of increases because now you're going to go your separate ways and the emotions involved are different. So that year was special for me and all of us. And the bonds that we had, that sort of became stronger. Our interactions increased with each of my classmates, and many of them were hostelites, and again majority boys.
Which
I have
which college was this?
I was studying in SDM Law College in Mangalore.
Okay.
This was in 2000 and between 2004 and 9.
Okay, good.
So over there also, I was always considered one among the boys. You would never find me around a flock, a group of girls. It was even if I was found there, it was usually because I was the messenger. The boys would tell me, saying, "Go and tell the girls this needs to be done," so and so. I'm like, "Okay, no problem." But I was always among the boys. And then once something happened, some sort of conversation, and the boys were having a very casual conversation. Then my friend, one of my friends, is like, "Please, she's also here," and they say, "We don't consider her to be female. She's one among us. Chalta hai." I was like, "What do you mean chalta hai?" So I remember that. But at that point, I was like a bit hurt because the female side of me was like offended. But the other way, I was also happy saying, all of them, because they all come from various backgrounds, very conservative to people who come from families which are very open minded, but all of them are like, she's one among us. For whatever reason, I felt happy about that, saying I was
Wonderful.
included in that group. Yeah. So these were experiences that I had. uh, Now, in office, I would say, again, I think the topic is similar. My ex boss, we were having a late night session. We were working very late. We are having a discussion. This was way back, I think, in 18, 17, 16. So at that point, we were having a conversation, and it was a mixed group. Again, the point came up to saying, should we be having this nature of conversation when she's there? And he was like, "Nay, I don't distinguish among my team members to male and female. They are all capable. They are all professionals. Let's close it out here." So that again sort of reinforced, saying ki, this need not be a drawback or anything of the sort. And that confidence, that the way you interact with others also has been different for me because of that. It made me happy. This instance, I had no I didn't feel offended or feel bad saying they don't consider me a female or anything. It was just uh, reassuring to know that they treat you as an equal. So that felt good. So this was among varied experience. There are so many, but this is what immediately came to mind.
This is so fascinating, Sridevi. I mean, this itself could be an hour-long podcast conversation for that matter. But for me, what really excites me is stories like these. I mean, stories. Sridevi, like all of us, we grow up listening to stories, especially when we are kids, from our parents and more so from our grandparents. And
Yes.
the storytelling way of kind of raising a child has a huge impact in the child's uh, formative years. Something, at least I feel, that given the nuclear nature of families that we have today, the home
Yes.
essentially is at the most maybe the mother, father, and a kid or two. And of course, in urban cities like ours, both of us have to work to feed the family. So
Right.
you have a son, and I'm
Yes.
wondering if there are these thoughts in your head as to what you gained from the amazing stories and experiences you had as a kid, jumping off the walls with your brothers, giving it back to them, uh, is something that kids of today, could be missing? I mean, I'm wondering if that sort of, as a mother, that makes you feel a bit anxious.
So it does make me anxious, because when I think about my childhood, the nature of childhood that I had summer vacations where I would go and meet up with all my cousins. For the initial 10 years of my life, I was an only child. But I never felt saying, lonely or anything, because I had this set of brothers and siblings that I could talk to, or write to. At that time, writing letters were the most happening thing that could be done. The blue inland envelope, that letter that you used to get, and then we would write letters and then we would send. Or when our parents are writing something towards the last end, we'll get a chance to write our own letter to our cousins there. So that was what we had experienced. I go home, I know I'll have my set of brothers or sisters coming over, and 1 month will be spent experiencing life together away from everything else. uh, TV would be optional.
Or
Today I feel
maybe even
it's
non-existent.
non-existent also, because you're so busy having fun with with your tribe, so to speak. You're least bit bothered about what is happening on TV, because there is so much happening here. You are not concerned with something that is happening elsewhere in the world and not at all related to you. But I remember we used to play throughout the day. We used to play morning to evening. We would get yelled at by by our parents saying, "Why are you playing in the hot sun? Come inside and play indoor for a bit, carom, chess." No, we would want to play cricket. We would want to play hide and seek. We would want to run around the house. All of this. When we did have to, come into the house and sit down for a while, I remember we used to wait, because over there power cuts were quite often at, used to happen quite often at that time. And there was this, I think, time slot. In Kerala, I must say, they are very punctual on the dot. You can set your watch by the time the power cut would happen. 8 to 8:30. I mean, maybe not accurate, but 8 to 8:30 is what I remember. And we used to wait. When will the power come back? Come back, and then immediately Night Rider. So we had that fixed thing saying, "Ki power cut, the power is back," and immediately switch on the TV, because it would be 1 hour of Night Rider series that all of us used to enjoy watching. That was like the highlight of the day for us. And then we would all be, pushed off to bed. Whereas today, I see my son, or the children of my colleagues or friends, even not just the children, even us, we are so engrossed with the screens. Not just TV, I think will also be replaced in a couple of years. It'll only be data driven content that we'll be watching. The screen may be a big one or a small one. We are all obsessed with the screen, and we don't realize how much of our time it is consuming, and we are not doing anything except to watch some content that someone somewhere has posted. We are not really living our lives, because we are busy trying to look at what somebody else is doing. And I think our kids and generations today, for them, that is the norm. They don't even know that we can have this nature of experiences also. You can do things yourself. They are not they don't know that at all. And somewhere I believe they are missing out on life itself, because the way you experience things and the way you see just a video or a documentary is completely different. You will not have the same experience per se. When you experience, say, going and experiencing a waterfall, directly standing underneath it, versus watching somebody else narrate the incident or their experience, you cannot draw a parallel there. My son's choices are different. He prefers to sit and play video games. Right? He prefers to watch YouTube videos of video games, so that he knows what he needs to do in the video game. So these are his interests. He also likes to go out and explore nature. He loves bugs and insects, and it is very interesting. But as the nature of parent that I am, I may not be able to address what he needs. He's an only child, right? My husband is able to address all of those aspects, to address his queries, saying, "Ki, why is it like this? Why do Why do frogs behave like this? All of those queries, my husband's actually, researches and goes back to him with answers that I really admire him for. I don't have the patience. But whereas, his experience is more by himself. He's by himself. He's not very keen on going and interacting with all the kids. But yes, you broach the topic of any insect or animal to him, he'll be the, most communicative when it comes to those subjects. But otherwise, I don't see him interacting much with the other children.
Doesn't it mean that for parents of today's times, the challenge is more about trying to learn the language that the kids want to listen? That may be unfamiliar territory to us, but for example, if I know Siddharth, right? He's a dreamer. I know. I saw those amazing science fiction books that he reads. Last time I got to have a brief conversation with him, it was about his fascination to build a robo who can do magical things, and
Yes.
and something which logically didn't make any sense to me, but for him it was real. What was fantasy to me was real to him. So I wonder if parents
Yes.
of today, where the kids live mentally in a very different zone, there is an challenge and an opportunity to connect to them in that zone.
I agree with what you're saying. But see, for me, like I said, for me, the challenge is I come from a very different childhood. Now,
Yes.
for me, because see, their childhood cannot be what we experience because our life and our lifestyles have changed. I grew up in a tier 2 town where, and my family's focus was on, being with the family, spending time with our extended family, our parents. It was nearby, close by, 3 hours away. Whereas for me, I stay in Mumbai. My parents are in Mangalore, which is 1,000 kilometers away. The first hurdle in my mind is getting there. Even though I want my son to experience the childhood that I had. Even if I go there today, he'll not have cousins over there because they are all scattered across various geographies. So I'll still not be able to give that nature of experiences to my child. I do try. The challenge is for me also to adjust and understand saying I cannot give that nature of childhood to him, and I'll have to find ways in which I'll be able to still help him have a good childhood, because my definition of a good childhood in my mind is hardwired. I need to have it reprocessed and understand saying it has to be different, and I need to align my thought process. Having said that, I still feel I still feel he's missing out on a lot of things.
This is leaving me with a very interesting thought and a question, which maybe we'll come back to it a little later in the conversation. There is an amazing, rich legacy that you and I and people in our generation have inherited in the way we've grown up. And the question that is then to me is, there is this amazing legacy that I have inherited. What is the legacy I'm going to leave behind for my next generation? So, Sridevi, let me steer this conversation in a slightly different direction, for which I would like to play a small song for you. Not the entire song, but the opening piece of that song. You may have seen this movie, which was a favorite. It was a hit when it came, called Chachi 420.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I remember, yes.
1997
Kamal Hassan.
1997 film of Kamal Hassan, which actually was an adaptation of an equally beautiful English movie called Mrs. Doubtfire, by Robin Williams. So let me play this small song for you, and then from Chachi 420, and we'll take it from there.
दौड़ दौड़ भागा भागा सा, दौड़ दौड़ भागा भागा सा, दड़ दड़ भाग भाग सा 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 वक्त ये सख्त है थोड़ा 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 मांगा मांगा सा 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 वक्त ये सख्त है थोड़ा थोड़ा.
So actually, this song can best be enjoyed visually. So anybody interested can go to YouTube and do a search on.
I don't think you need to watch a video also. It is imprinted in our minds and very, very relatable, very, very situational.
So it's a beautiful song sung by Hariharan, which actually tells us how we live our life, running around in circles, especially the corporate life that we all live. And I wouldn't be surprised that this wouldn't be a part of your corporate experience as well. Just about everybody. I mean, this is not to comment whether this is right or wrong, but this is how the world of work is today, where
Yes.
just log in, connect, spend 12 hours, 10 hours of the day, and then come back home, tired, only to go back next day, and so on and so forth. So there was this interesting conversation I had once with someone, and a question that came up as a part of our conversation was, in doing what I am doing, what am I really doing? And what am I really doing it for? And whom am I doing it for? So these questions, I'm sure, are at the back of the mind of many people who are at work, consciously or otherwise. I wonder if this also plays on you.
It does. And I would say it more frequently nowadays, because I believe I'm at that point in my life where I'm asking myself, all of this, because the trigger is a lot of factors. There's my family asking me, what about a second child? What about this? Why do you spend so much time, at work? Or, you spend so much energy with your work. You're doing so many things. Why don't you make time for yourself? All of these questions keep coming at me from, various quarters. Uh, there was a time when, I was asked, why don't you take a break? Spend time with your son, give him the attention he needs, and then later get back to. It's not easy. It's not easy taking a break and getting back to work. It's not easy continuing doing what you're doing. But among all of this, obviously, when you are being bombarded with all of these views and these questions, at some point you will start wondering, am I doing the right thing? Why am I doing all of this? And especially in the days you're frustrated, the why am I doing all of this will definitely crop into your mind. Saying, why am I doing all of this? The tone will be different. And your thought process also are aligned with your mood. Accordingly, it takes a different tangent each time, depending on your frame of mind. So for me, it has been saying, I'm working. I'm a law graduate by qualification. By profession, I'm not practicing. I have moved into a corporate world. So my entire family, I will say 80-90% is lawyers. So from my dad is a senior lawyer. He always asks, why don't you go back to practice? Why don't you start practice? He has, that is his aspiration for me. But somewhere I believe that maybe practice is not real. I'm not really cut out for practice. That is my thought. Whereas, but there are differing views that I come. And in this, at that particular point in time, when I'm asking myself, what am I doing all of this, juggle or struggle for? All of these thought processes, I have so many questions and thoughts that keep popping into my mind. And I remember once when I was extremely frustrated, I thought of the scene in Harry Potter where Dumbledore, he takes the thought out of his mind and he puts it into bowl of water, whereas you're constantly, your mind is so full of thoughts that you're not really able to focus on anything, and that impairs your for me, that impairs your ability to actually focus on something and get something done, because at the back of the mind you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4. But end of it all, when I sit down and I'm like, what am I doing all of this for? What am I struggling for? Because I have aspirations. I've had a bucket list that I created a few years back. Except for 2 items, nothing has moved on it. That included a solo trip, that included a road trip with my family or with my friends, maybe an international trip, maybe just a 3-day trip that I just go on my go by myself. I just pack up and I just go. But that has not materialized. But when I think back on it, right, what stopped me? There wasn't all the hurdles that are there, it's all in my mind only. Everything else is a practical point that you can deal with. Visa nahi hai, you'll get it. You can go to any of, you want an international trip, right? Go somewhere where visa is on arrival. You have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I've thought about it. What do you say, travel to work and back requires me to go past the airport, and sometimes I do take the airport route. When I do that, I wonder, एक दिन में जाके parking में गाड़ी लगाऊंगी, passport लेके, and I'll just move on. I'll just go and I'll come back on a Monday morning. I have thought it, and I'm like, why can't I do it? There's nothing stopping me. I have the money. I have my passport. Visa is on arrival. What stopped you? Then you think, अरे नहीं, पार्किंग में जाओगे तो वहां पे पैसा देना पड़ेगा 3 दिन का इतना. Go there, वहां पे फिर होटल नहीं मिली तो घर में 10 सवाल उठेंगे तो. So it's possible, but you yourself put up so many hurdles for yourself. You don't really go and get it done. But end of the day, all of that stress, all of this manifests in your mind, and then you're wondering, why should I be struggling here? Why can't I do something on my own, or find out something that I actually enjoy doing, or maybe look for a place where it's a very laid back atmosphere, and 9 to 5, and I push off. Even in that 9 to 5, it is not, I don't need to push myself too much. Okay, you're there in the office from 9 to 5, and then you can go back home. But that is not in my nature. I also know. So, and I've gotten this feedback saying ki tum chup nahi baith sakti. Even if you have an environment where you can do such work, where in 9 to 5 you're in office, aram se lunch pe gaye 1 ghanta wapas aaye, you yourself will not be able to do it, because you'll be like, ye ho gaya, what next? That is how life is, right? And when I think about what I want to do, to be honest, when I really didn't want to become a lawyer, I was more keen on becoming a journalist. It was just that the call for admission was a little late, because of which my dad said, you join law, usme itna dikkat nahi hai. So I ended up taking up law, and once I took it, I got the admission call later. Then dad was like, you continue. If you still wish to pursue journalism, you can still, change later. I said, okay. But today, here I am, and I am in the corporate world. So when I think about it, I always wonder, saying, my dad used to practice. He was available. They had a two-month vacation time. Summer vacation was for both me and my dad. Why? Because the courts, he was a civil lawyer, so courts would be closed for him also. So it was a family vacation time. Whereas for me today, my son has, say, 2 months of summer vacation. I'll have to calculate how many days of leave I'll be able to take. And leave, for my own conscience, I should feel saying कि ठीक है 10 दिन छुट्टी लिया फिर भी I am like ठीक है मैंने काम किया कुछ तो. It is that constant thought of whether I'm doing justice to my job, doing justice to what I'm doing, all of these that keep keep popping up in my mind.
But isn't this what building a ghar grihasthi is all about, Sridevi? I mean, livelihood and supporting and making a livelihood is an important part of one's life. I mean, in many ways, work, I see it, is not just about putting in our efforts, energy for earning money. to support the family. Of course, that's extremely important. I mean, we live in times where cost of living being such, where sabji is 100 rupees plus. Tomatoes as we speak are off the market. We won't be able to see it for them for some time. Fuel being at whatever price. So if you look at food, fuel, medicine, and education, 3 or 4 key items in the personal consumption basket of a household today, even for a family of 3 like yours, and for many it's a family of not just 3, but with 2 kids and parents, it's a family of 6. So whether it is urban India or semi-urban India, or for that matter even rural hinterland, livelihood and supporting a family is a big part of one's life. And of course, it's not about just earning money to put food on the table or having a shelter above you, but it also, I feel, is a way to discover multiple facets of oneself. The world of work gives us an opportunity to explore various identities of oneself and say that, yes, I can do this and that, and not just be the warrior girl that I am, but even be the compassionate leader at work. And I'm sure at work, when you are leading your legal team, would be experiencing your compassionate side too.
Yes. See, I very much agree with what you've said about livelihood being key, right? But there I will highlight saying there is a difference in thought with respect to what the previous generation had versus what I have and what the next generation has. The previous generation was concerned with livelihood. They were like, job security was of utmost important. It still is for this generation. But when it comes to, I'll say they are a little more self-centered today, or maybe more individual centered today. Even me, I will not say, I am somebody who is what do you say, so selfless that I only think about others. No, I always think saying ki, after everything is said and done, what can I do for myself? That is a very key question for me. And the next generation, the younger generation that I have seen, for them they are very much individual centric, saying ki mera kya, what about this interest of mine? It starts from me. Whereas our previous generation was my family or my close ones. I am like, inka ho gaya abhi mera. The next generation is like mera, then tera. That is how I have perceived, the transition in the thought processes. Now, where I am today, I am torn between, doing everything for everybody and doing something for myself. Because after I do, or whatever I can, I do for all of them in my family, I am torn between what is left for me, what time is left for me. Because if I want something now, say I need to take my son for certain classes, it has a certain cost, and it also takes time. I need to go drop him, pick him up. But when it comes to doing a similar activity for myself, something that I want to pursue, dance is something that I have wanted to learn. Uh, but in so many years, or swimming also, but in so many years, I have not taken time out for myself, or thought about, setting some amount aside for this, because everything else took precedence. Everything else was more important.
But Sridevi, I'll flip the argument on the other side. Isn't this what is life? Being pulled in multiple directions. I mean, there is this what is, then there is this what ought to be, and then there is the third thing, which is what attracts.
I agree, and what you're saying is right. The challenge comes in when there's a pile up of all the things that I have not done, or say I've done everything, and I'm at that point where my energy levels are low, I'm exhausted, and I want time for myself, and I know I can't take it. That's the time or point in time when I feel, what am I doing all of this for? That's when all of these questions arise. Till then, you're happy, you're satisfied with life. Anybody asks you, are you happy? Your answer will be yes. Life is good. God has blessed me with so many, so and so and so and so. But if anybody asks me the same question at that point when I'm, my energy levels are low, I'm feeling frustrated, I'll tell, thinking I'm not really sure where life is taking me.
And then
That will be my
and,
response.
and then you'll start singing Doda Doda Bhaga Bhaga Sa.
Yes, that situation definitely. Because like I said, it's see while I have been ruminating about all of these questions, all of these thoughts that come into my mind, at the end of the day, what is it that makes it different, or how does it become easier for me to handle or make the situation better? It is not that something changed, yeah, somebody else did something for you. It is only and only that the way you looked at it was different, or you changed the way you looked at a situation. End of the day, I was frustrated, all of it. But then after a while, I just took myself out of that situation and said, see, me, you sitting and doing this particular crying session over your own choices and everything is not going to take you anywhere. Look at it differently. And today, that's what I'm doing. The past few months have been a transitory phase for me, but today I realize, think, if I have to consistently keep doing things to align things in my life, that includes the time that I give my family, the time that I give in office, and the time I need to make time for myself. So today I have identified 1 2. I know I need 3, so today I'm working on 1 and 2 to make space for the 3 being for myself.
But
Not all of us will enjoy it, but yes, in my mind now I have realized saying ki I need to set this priority and I have to align everything else to meet all 1 2 and 3. The
but
only thing that has changed is my mindset.
Sridevi, what also happens, I feel, is the life that I want for myself, the life I want for my family, for my kids, and of course, for people like us, we have aging parents whom we have to look after.
Right.
So that's an added. I will not use the word responsibility here. I don't have the right word for that, but that's an added commitment. And of course, to meet all these commitments, one does need money in the bank, and the cost of living,
Yes.
and the inflation and other things, that is a constant reality. That's also something which is a part of life. And fortunately today, I think we are blessed that we have investment instruments, not just the fixed deposit in the banks that probably our earlier generation had. I think we are reasonably well aware and educated about, let's say, things like equity investment or mutual fund investment. I mean, you work for a very large, private sector insurance company, which is a part of an extremely large, financial institution of the country today. I'm a customer of theirs. I think it's also liberating in a sense that I have choices to not only earn for myself, but even making whatever I earn, invest well. Because in this question called how much money do I need, or how much money is enough, is an unanswerable question, like the chicken and the egg, right?
So I have a perspective there. If you ask me how much money is enough, it will always be not enough. I need more.
Correct.
Because the irony is, the more you get, the more you spend. That is unfortunately how I will not really generalize, but majority of us, that is how we are. We are
Correct.
so happy that I have got an increment now, या फिर मुझे bonus मिल गया, या फिर यहाँ से मुझे कुछ return या FD का return आ गया. My next thought is, इसको मैं कहाँ रखूँ या कहाँ खर्च करूँ. It is not saying कि oh, I got so much, I can set this aside for this. It is not that. Majority of us, our first thought is, chalo credit card ka bill pay karna hai, or whatever liability is there, or some new expense that we want to incur.
Sure.
It is very rare for any of us to think of actually putting that or setting that aside for a saving, or to actually do something that you have been thinking of for a long while. And from an financial, I'll say education perspective, right? I started very late. I started in my early 30s to to even think about mutual funds and all of that. I was clueless as to mutual. I have only heard about mutual funds, but it is only recently that in the past 5 8 years that I've started actually investing in mutual funds, and that too on my own research and basis inputs that I've received. Because there is no basic education, or maybe even a little bit of information provided in the education system itself on the financial aspects. What is tax? How much is taxable? What is the concept of tax? That I think as a kid I didn't know, and I was least bit bothered.
Correct.
Primarily because that concept was not there in the education system at all. Maybe today it is different. The concept may be there, but still, for the children to understand, or for anybody in that for that matter to understand, when you get money, what are the things you can do with it other than spending, is very limited. You can, spending wise, you don't need anybody to teach you. You will find your own ways. The ease with which you spend is not the same when it comes to the ease of saving or identifying where exactly to put your money for it to grow. I only knew FD, the same as my parents' FD. 5 साल के लिए रख दो. And then it was only in the recent years that I came to know saying कि mutual funds hai. Mutual funds is also similar to FD, but the shorter time lock-in and all of that. And you have tax savings. Mutual funds became lucrative then. Then I started putting in mutual fund. Then I realized, oh, it gives you good returns also. Then I started putting in more, but that was limited. Now I hear about, many of the people that I know, they talk about trading. They're talking about, I applied this logic, I applied itna historical data leke kiya and everything. But these are things that those individuals take interest and do. I don't see anything, and especially easy snippets of information on how to manage your finances. There are people who, again, coming back to the topic of reels, there are these Insta reels and YouTube reels which talk about investment, give you bits and pieces of information about certain things. But beyond that, there are a lot of questions in my mind. Where do I go? And where do I understand? The concepts are also, so what is an FNO? I don't know. I still don't know. I would have read it. I would have, gone through it. I would know the legal terms. But practically, what exactly does it entail, or what does it mean for me? I'm clueless. So I'm scared to venture into that particular option itself.
The world of financial investments, whilst it gives us so many choices and options and liberates us from meager returns on our investment, there are, if you do some simple study and invest wisely, of course there are great returns that you can get. But at the same time, that world has also become extremely complex, like any other part of one's life. But coming back, I believe, especially young women like you, who are a part of corporate world, doing some amazing work, do have the wherewithal to face this very important question in life as to what do I do with this most important resource that is required for living, which is money, and not only to earn them, but pay our taxes and invest wisely, and not live a life where at the end of the month you say, okay, I have met my monthly family expenses, I've paid the maid, I've done the EMI, I've paid the kids' school fees, I've spent on my entertainment, etc., etc. And then not reach a stage where, there is this line at the end of trucks in India, no? There are these simple Hindi slogans. And I remember one which says, total kiya to muddal bhi gayab. So I did all the income expenditure, and I say, oh my goodness, I'm so much of excess of expense over income and so on and so forth. But I guess that's a part of living, which each one of us have our own specific questions and will look for answers. But in all this, there are certain questions which are larger than life, which are fortunately being talked about. For example, this whole idea of social inclusion, especially with phrases like gender diversity and openness to even same-sex relationship that we are living today. And fortunately, the law of the land has also respected and recognized this need for human beings. That is one big reality as to how do we live in a world where there is a world of as much non-discrimination as possible, a very inclusive world where we create space for everybody. And of course, the bigger question, we know, the impact of climate change that is happening on everyday life.
Yes.
Rains are getting delayed. The 100-day monsoon that is there in India, which was there for decades and centuries, probably we get as much rain or more, but in a much shorter period of time. So there is flooding. So most cities
Yes.
getting flooded and so on and so forth. So I think there's also a larger realization all of us have, and I'm sure you would be having too, as to what am I doing or wanting to do or willing to do for something which is much larger than me and my family, as such, for the larger ecology. I don't know if these thoughts keep you awake, or at least when you drive to work and back, these questions pop up in your head.
They do. And frankly speaking, I'm somebody who gets annoyed when somebody litters. They throw something out of their car or two-wheeler, or they don't really put something in the dustbin, right? Be it at home or outside, I'm somebody who will be annoyed immediately. Thinking, it doesn't take a lot of effort to put it, in there. And it's not just at your home, any place for that matter. What's the harm in keeping it clean? What I do is, even if I don't find a dustbin around, I usually try to wrap it up and put it back in my bag. When I find a dustbin, I will dispose of it there. Again, similarly, at home, we order from Zomato, Swiggy, Zepto, Blinkit, whatnot. All of it comes in plastic packaging. You might have tried to do away with all the plastic bottles at home and everything, but the minute you think of these aspects in your daily life, you're still somewhere contributing to, I would say, spoiling the environment around you, one way or the other. What is it that you do with the plastic? Max to max fridge mein 2 din ke liye rakh doge, or you'll use it to maybe microwave a few things, but then after that it does go out where? I am not thinking about that at all. And there are few of us who order things from outside every day. So imagine the amount of plastic or any other material which cannot be recycled. And otherwise also, I go get groceries for myself, I'm bringing it in packets or things that cannot be easily recycled. Cannot be recycled, but then saying ki certain things are recyclable. What are you doing to ensure it gets recycled? You at home, you may be segregating wet waste and dry waste, but do we really know it goes out of your house in that form? You are satisfied with yourself saying ki theek hai, maine kar liya. But does it actually materialize into something that is good for the world? I don't know. And at home also, there are many a times where I have uh, gathered all the plastic in the house and kept it aside, saying ki I'll give it somewhere, some recycling center, but I don't really know where is the recycling center. That information is not easily available. So end of the day, after my mother-in-law or my mom yells at me saying ki why have you put it together कबाड़ वाले की तरह ऐसे भर के क्यों रखा है कोने में, that's when I'll be like forced to give it out along with the rest of the daily waste that moves out. I just wrap it up and give it away. Why? Because I couldn't find the time to do it. I didn't know where to give it. End of the day, what was my contribution? Although I have such big ideas or ideals about how things should be done, nothing. I didn't really work on what I want to pursue, the principles that I have. I didn't really pursue it, and that I believe is with everybody. Very few who actually put in the effort, identify and do something. We talk about, that is one thing. Second is, we talk about recycling and all, but what about the flora and fauna? Today in my society, because of the rains, they've cut down a lot of trees. But as I go on my walk every day, the constant thought that keeps popping up in my mind is, they've cut the tree because during the rains it will fall, it will damage something. But will they replant and nurture or make sure that new sapling grows into the same same old tree, or big enough to ensure that it survives? I don't believe so. Very rare for anybody to actually pursue, because it's a long term process. Actually nurturing a plant from a sapling to a tree takes years. Who's going to put in that effort? But again, I'm willing to give money to somebody to do it, but I'll not do it myself. I'll satisfy my own conscience saying कि मैंने इतना तो कर लिया, इतना मुझसे हो सकता है.
So, Sridevi, amongst all this lament of life and living, I want to ask you, what is it that Sridevi Damodar appreciates of herself, who she is, and what she stands for?
So, I had initially, tried to find out who I am and all of that, philosophically speaking. But after a while, my thought was, I am who I am. The way I am, my life experiences have molded me into the sort of person that I am. And there is no one else like me. That statement will apply to each and every individual that is there in this world. So I don't think any sort of comparison, any sort of equating or trying to be somebody is not required. You are a unique person that can never ever be there in the world, irrespective of subjecting them to the same set of experiences also. That is the beauty of the mind and the way nature is. You cannot have the same of something. Maybe something inanimate, yes, but something that is a living being, I don't think you can have the same thing. Your mind will definitely ensure in its own way that you are a beautiful, unique person. And that's what I believe I am, a beautifully unique person. Nothing to do with the way I look, nothing to do with anything material, but the way my mind is or my soul is, there's nothing else like that in the world. They say, right, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I completely believe in that statement. Whatever beauty you perceive, it is totally up to you as to what you see and how you see it. I might see somebody and I may believe saying, for me that person is beautiful. Whereas somebody else will see, isme kya khas hai? Why do you like that person so much? Because my like or dislike is not the way they look. I have known that person and I find that person beautiful because of the way they are. The way, I'll say, the way as an individual they are, their personality. Everything that makes them unique, irrespective of the way they look, the makeup, the clothes, the color of their skin, their physical appearances, all of that aside. That individual, the core of or the essence of that individual is what I find beautiful. And I believe that is the crux of everything. You just vibe together. When you know you have a frequency with somebody, you just get along. That's why some people you just have that immediate connect with, right? You can't explain it really. You might not have had a conversation, you might be seeing each other for the first time, but you just have a sense of positive energy or exchange or whatever it is that you want to call, for which reason you say pata nahi mujhe acha laga banda.
Sridevi, they say for some of the big questions in life, the answers are very, very simple. So if I were to revisit that question which we had in the earlier part of our conversation as to what's my legacy, what you have just stated right now about seeing and accepting the people and the world around you as it is and seeing the beauty in them itself is the legacy, is how I see it, is how I hear it. So it looks like you already have answered the question, what's Sridevi's legacy?
I guess you're right. Maybe, that is it, because I've been pondering on it. Because legacy, otherwise the term you usually associated with materialistic things, what great things you can do, right? But like you just said, sometimes it's the simplest of things that can have its mark and it becomes your legacy, and a very much appreciated legacy. I know I have heard stories from my parents, about my grandparents and how they were as individuals, despite everything that they had or didn't have. The the way they helped certain individuals in their life, totally unrelated. But even to this day, close to a century later, those individuals or their family members still remember the kindness or the compassion shown by an individual who's no more. Those individuals may not have interacted with them, but they still remember from their parents about how they helped them at a certain time. Help need not necessarily be financial either. It can just be a word of encouragement, some form of support. That has a huge impact, and that, I believe, is your biggest legacy. It's not about the money you leave behind for somebody, how many properties, what sort of materialist thing you left behind, but the sense or the feeling that you leave them with, what you would have done for them by just being yourself. I think that is the biggest gift that you have and the legacy you can leave.
What
I thank you for you bringing that clarity into my thought for me.
what a beautiful note we are ending this conversation with, Sridevi. This has been such a moving conversation for me. There have been parts of our conversation where I felt like laughing. I felt like uh, crying also in some parts. But of course, I had to keep it to myself. We are having this conversation online. But thank you for creating this experience for our listeners by showing up who you are and what you are. And I really, really appreciate and thank you for that. Just want to end this conversation by asking you, how has this experience been for you?
I should first thank you because when I was first asked about if I would be interested, in being a part of this particular podcast or experience, I was hesitant. I was not sure, if because I am not a very not a big extrovert, so to speak, and not somebody who's confident about putting my personal thoughts out there. But my sister actually encouraged me, saying, "Why don't you?" And I was like, "Let me see." So that and the fact, like I said, I don't really back down from something that is put before me. I'm like, what am I going to lose if I do try it out? Think it doesn't work out or it doesn't come out well. At least you'll know something. So I decided, and I'm really glad because the thoughts that have been circling around at the back of my mind because of this conversation, it has brought in a lot of clarity for me. A lot of thoughts that were otherwise scattered. I'll say you were my Dumbledore for me. You brought in a lot of clarity. You brought in a lot of insight that otherwise I was missing out on because of maybe all of those overthinking and oversight. But a very good experience for me. The conversations, you don't really get to have such conversations with anybody every day, right? But because of this podcast, I have focused on those questions and I've got a lot of answers to questions that were otherwise bothering me or on my mind. So thank you for this wonderful experience, and I look forward to seeing how this comes out, and listening to a lot of your other podcasts as well.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75 at gmail.com. Thank you.